Welcome to Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Rise of the Ronin. I play on the PS5 because it's a PS5 exclusive. So let's get into the story. You get to create two characters, and they are blade twins. They are part of a secret organization in Japan that are honestly far more ninja, it seems like, than samurai in my mind. But when you are sent on your first mission, well, it doesn't go particularly well. As per your rules, one of you is basically left to sacrifice themselves so the other can get away. And whichever one gets away is the one you play as for the rest of the game. How does that play into the story? Well, this takes place in the 1800s when Europeans, Americans, etc. were starting to investigate Japan and kind of start spreading industrialization there, or at least attempting to. Which leads to a cultural clash because the Japanese were still very much a traditional society. They hadn't progressed in those ways. And you essentially kind of get wrapped up in that whole war. And you have ways of trying to find your blade twin, and you can either be anti-shogunate or pro-shogunate, and if you're pro-shogunate, you're basically pro-western, whereas if you're anti, you're more traditional. And that does have some impacts on how missions play out, etc. But I'm gonna say this, the story really didn't do enough to pull me in. It was there, it was fairly interesting, but it really didn't keep me going. At no point in time was I clamoring for what was next. I was very happy to fuck off and do side missions. That's how engaging the story was. Which is not to say that I found a lot of the side missions super engaging either. So let's move on to the audio. And the first thing I'm gonna say is the voiceover work it's a thing. They made some choices, I'm gonna say that. Regarding some of the accents, some of the actors' deliveries, just all of that, they made some choices, and not really positive ones in my opinion. Including when you're creating your character, because you basically have two voices and you can change the pitch. So you can take voice 1 or 2 and make it higher or lower, and it's not awesome, honestly. It felt kind of shitty and lazy. As for the music, I liked the music. I think the music was really good in this game. And for the sound effects, I thought they were good. I didn't really have any complaints with them. I think they work well. Let's get into the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and this is an open world, honestly kind of Soulsborne. But this is like the most entry-level Soulsborne possible. Like, I've never said I was great at Soulsborns, but like this game, I go in, I could beat a boss 3, maybe 4 attempts, probably not even 4. Whereas like Dark Souls, I'm sitting there bashing my face against a wall. It does operate on a lot of the similar combat mechanics. I would say it reminds me a lot of Sekiro, where countering is a huge thing. And I hate to make all those comparisons, but it does just very much feel that way when you're playing it. But it is very open world. There's a lot of side missions as well as the main missions and just other side tasks. There's the occasional climbing of towers, but it's not like the core mechanic. You actually unlock other things around the world by visiting shrines and lighting these fires regarding your group. But it's not like climbing, you can just find them along the road, as well as finding and petting cats. When you do those things in an area, it will reveal other things in the area, treasure chests, enemies, etc. Specific enemies, like harder enemies, little groups, little challenge areas, I guess you'd almost call them. And completing those unlocks other areas and shows them on your map, etc. You can also choose to be sneaky sneak, or you can choose to go in and really engage in the combat. I liked to try and be sneaky sneak as much as possible. And then you also meet friends along the way, essentially, and those friends along the way, you can have accompany you as AI combatants on specific missions, not every single mission. But there are also players that you can invite. You can run into Ronin throughout the world, but it's not like they're necessarily active players when you run into them. But when you are doing those special missions, you can invite friends and do it co-op. Or other players just in general. You can do missions co-op, just not every single one. Before I forget, one thing I loved and hated was the horse. So you could get your horse to auto run, and that was cool and all, and I always love that in games when you're traveling by horse quite a bit. The problem is, your horse is dumb. Like, it does some dumb shit. Like, it needs to go over a bridge. Instead, it goes down into the dry riverbed and just starts running up against the buttresses of the bridge. That gets a little frustrating and kind of defeats the point of the auto run. It's not the best auto run. When it's working, cool. When it's not, it makes you hate things. Let's get on to the controls. And I'm gonna say, I think the controls work well. I didn't have any complaints. There wasn't a point in time where I was unhappy with my response time, with my camera, with anything like that. And then lastly, graphics and visuals, and it's a good looking game. I don't think it's an amazing looking game, but we are kind of at a point where even not great looking games still look quite good. I mean, a not great looking PS5 game is still pretty good looking. There's just details that could be better. There are times where I felt like I could see pixelation, but at the same time, there is a certain level of detail that I did appreciate, like when you're walking through an area with trees and grass and stuff, the grass does move, just not amazingly, but it does move while you're moving through it. I did like the detail in the visuals in the combat, like you can cut off dudes' heads and limbs, etc. I mean, once you cut off a head or a limb, obviously they die. But there's that bloody element, and like there are certain giant animals that will attack you, and you know, you slash them, they get bloodier, and I think that's a cool little detail in the game. And I do like this game from a visual standpoint, that older Japanese vibe, but then you start getting like old muskets and rifles. You get Western garb because now you've got Europeans and whatnot there, and suits, and you get this kind of hybridization of buildings. You get like a Western building mixed with all these Japanese traditional buildings around the world. So overall, I thought like the design they brought to it was really cool and the visuals were awesome. I think the details were good and brought to life pretty well graphically. They just weren't like necessarily top notch. So let's get into the wrap up. And I'm gonna say this game does nothing to offend me, but it also does nothing that made me feel I needed to play this game. Playing this game honestly started to feel like a chore. I wasn't super engaged in the story. The gameplay, it works. I can't really shit on it, but at the same time, it didn't do anything that really pulled me in. All of which is really unfortunate because I wanted to enjoy this experience a lot more because I love the setting, I love the time period, I love the era. But the game itself just does nothing for me. If you're looking for like an intro into Souls-likes, I think this is a good way of going about it because it's easy, but it has a lot of the mechanics and you can start to get that down. But if you love Dark Souls, Demon Souls, any of those, Bloodborne, etc., like this game isn't going to present the challenge you're looking for. And for me, at the end of the day, it just didn't do enough to make me care. So for me, I would not recommend it. There are some small circumstances where I could say, hey, go play this. But as a whole, for me, it just didn't do it. So I struggle to recommend it to literally everyone. Okay, in the comments down below, why don't you tell me, has there ever been a game where it didn't directly offend you or anything, but you just couldn't love it? And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one.